Now we know through actual studies that have been done since then that people with higher levels of happiness, gratitude, tend to have lower feelings of pain and lower instances of disease. We also know that things like depression, anxiety, and trauma, which is severe amounts of depression and anxiety, actually have higher inflammatory markers, disruption in their cortisol levels, which all affects proper immunity.
Talk us through the connection between the emotions of a human being and their autonomic systems, their immune systems and their nervous systems. How do those things all interplay, and how does trauma actually affect the immune system?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I observed these differences back when I was a medical student, and it led me actually to my first specialty. I was planning to specialize. I mean, I'd done genetic research in leukemias, and I had thought I was probably going into either internal medicine or rheumatology, something like that. And when I was going through my medical school rotations, I spend a lot of time with patients. Even now, my appointments are 75 minutes. I don't believe in this whole idea that you can help and heal someone in 10 minutes. It's part of the problem that we have now. But anyway, even as a med student, I would sit with the families and I would sit with patients and get to know them. And what I found over and over again is that the people who were happy, surrounded by family, had a lot of gratitude in their lives, a lot of them had these amazing breakthroughs, would go home when we thought they were going to die. And then I would see people who were depressed and isolated and lonely, and they couldn't even heal basic wounds, that it made no sense why they weren't getting better. So I started to notice that. And then I also noticed there was this one patient who really opened my mind a lot to this and really locked in my decision of my specialty. Was I was on my surgery rotation, and there was this one woman who had this infection on the bottom of her foot that had gotten so out of control that we had to do something called debridement every day. I don't want to freak people out, but basically we use our own scalpel to scrape off the infected areas because her immune system's just not healing it. And if we don't do that, they could lose their limb. And so every day the med students and residents would go in and do this work, and she would cry. It was horrible. It was the most depressing thing because she was alone in the room. She was depressed, and she would scream and cry while we did this. It was just, so demoralizing to have to be a part of that. And then one day we went in and her daughter was there, and she was talking to her daughter and she was laughing and happy. And I stood next to the resident holding the bowl while they did the debridement. And I noticed she never looked at us. She never cried. She didn't call out in pain, nothing. And when we left the room, the attending met us there, and I said, "Did you guys see that?" I said, "Did you see she didn't cry today?" Nobody noticed. Nobody noticed except me. I said, "She didn't cry today." And the attending said, "Why do you think that is?" I said, "Because she was with her daughter. She was feeling happy and loved. And so that decreased her sensation of pain. She didn't notice the pain." The residents rolled their eyes, and then the attending actually really liked it. The attending started an end-of-life program because of me as a third-year student, because I was so up in arms at defending
That's
people's,
amazing.
choice not to get procedures when they're 90 and their organs are failing and have dementia. Anyway, so it really struck me. Now we know through actual studies that have been done since then that people with higher levels of happiness, gratitude, tend to have lower feelings of pain and lower instances of disease. We also know that things like depression, anxiety, and trauma, which is severe amounts of depression and anxiety, actually have higher inflammatory markers, disruption in their cortisol levels, which all affects proper immunity. So what I was witnessing in real time has now been really shown by the studies that have come out. But it really struck me. I said, you know what? I've always been a very grateful person. My grandparents are Holocaust survivors, and they immigrated here as refugees after the war to find somewhere safe from, being from prejudice and murder by the Nazis and all the things that happened to them. It was a really horrible thing that they lived through. And so they taught me every day you wake up free is a great day. So even with lupus and chemo and everything else, I always felt very grateful because I still had a great life compared to them, right? Like I had a great life. So I thought about how much that might have been protective of me, and that even though I had severe disease, I had a great response to medication. I did come back from stage 4 kidney failure and went into a remission. My remission still showed me to have an impairment in function, but I didn't die. I didn't end up on dialysis. And I always thought of myself as a comeback kid, that I'd get a really bad diagnosis, but it always came back, you thought I'd be down, but I'm alive, right? So the medicines worked on me. Medicines didn't always work. I mean, Selena Gomez, super rich, supposed to be with the number one rheumatologist specialist in the LA, and she ended up getting a kidney transplant, and she got the same treatment I did. What was the difference between us? Well, she's now in a special kind of therapy for people with chronic suicidality and depression, and she came out and said that that therapy called DBT has helped her lupus more than anything else. So very interesting that me, someone who was already a generally happy and grateful person, the medicines worked better than someone who was depressed. So that was one thing. And then I remembered one other thing, which was when I was getting the chemotherapy, as happy and grateful as I was, I hated chemo. All right. 16 to 18, every month I'd get chemo and I'd spend a week throwing up, feeling like total garbage. And then it would take me about 3 weeks to get my strength back. And then I'd have to do it again. So chemo, I did not like chemo. So every time I got chemo, though, I remember on chemo day, I would always wake up feeling kind of sick, even though I didn't get it yet. I always woke up feeling kind of down and kind of sick, like, oh, here we go. And when it was my last chemo, it was a week before I was going to start college. So I was so excited. I got a scholarship to my dream school, Carnegie Mellon. I only had one chemo left, and I was going to go there and start my new chapter of my life. I was so excited. And so I went to get my last chemo, and I was so excited, I didn't even care that it was chemo day because it was the last one. So I was like, went to the hospital. I'm like, last chemo, and I'm in a great mood. They went in, they got the needle in first try, and it was the highest dose I ever got because every month they would increase the dose because they told me if they gave me the highest dose on the first time, I would have died. So you have to build up your tolerance to these poisonous chemicals that they're putting in you, right? So I'm getting the highest dose I ever got, and I didn't get any side effects. I didn't get nauseous. I didn't throw up. I didn't have anything. It was like it never happened. And after that, I'm 18. I go, what the hell happened here? And I couldn't figure out why it was. And so when I was a medical student and I was sitting there and I just watched that woman who didn't experience pain because her daughter was there, and I thought, if you're happy, not only can it decrease your sensation of pain, but it can decrease your side effects. It can decrease all these other things. And so I realized that I could probably save more lives by teaching people happiness than I can by just going into rheumatology. So I went into psychiatry and neurology, but I specialized in people with severe depression, anxiety, and trauma. And I taught, post-grad courses at the local college. I, trained people in a type of special treatment where what I taught is that relationships are what heal people from severe trauma. It's all of my experiences that come together to create the dramatic results that I've become so well known for, and that I hyper-nourish people with the most anti-inflammatory diet possible. I help them release their traumas and anxiety and depression and do that all at the same time. And what happens is really dramatic rapid disease reversal. That's what I often see in my programs is not only is their disease reversed, their aches and pains are gone, but for the first time they experience happiness and release anxiety. So I think when you can do all of that together, you get the most dramatic results possible. And it's why a lot of people, when people say, I tried a plant-based diet, it didn't work for me. A lot of people just jump in on, well, how much vegetables did you eat? And how much this did you eat? And I ask them, what's your moods like? How often do you feel depressed or anxious? How's your sleep? Because, while it's often that they didn't get the diet right, I also find very frequently it's not just the diet. It's the fact that they were hoping the diet was going to heal them while they still were tormented by negative moods. And we have to fix all those things together.
Our mental and physical well-being are so deeply entwined.